Welcome to Ambition's Apex, your guide to mastering the art of physique transformation and achieving peak performance across all arenas of life. Our mission is not just to sculpt bodies, but to change lives, empowering you towards excellence. Dive in with us as we explore insights and strategies designed to elevate you towards your journey of self-improvement. Enjoy the ascent. Let's get into it, bro. You and I are already good friends, but I don't think I've ever asked you how you originally got into bodybuilding and what age and what drove you to start bodybuilding.
So I'm a caveat to bodybuilding. I feel like, a lot of bodybuilders, especially, the Oakland guys, they're football players or, they did some kind of sports in high school. They're wrestlers, lifters, something like that. They built their foundation in high school and, slowly evolved from there. But my entry into it was a lot different than most. I got a later start to begin with. I didn't actually start bodybuilding until I actually have the exact date, April 1st, 2013. I was in the military at the time. I was serving in the Air Force, and I had a buddy who was a bodybuilder, and I'd wander past his desk every day. I'm like, dude, what the heck are you eating so many daggone meals? And what are you doing? Blah blah blah, this and that. And I'd always worked out, but never necessarily found my niche. I tried being a runner. I tried doing CrossFit. I'm like, this is a horrible idea. And ended up going to the St. Louis Pro. That would have been the last weekend in March then. Branch Warren was probably height of his season. So we're talking 2013 era. And, I just watched the competition and, met Branch and talked to people. And I looked at my buddy because he actually was my first coach at the time. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Pen and papered it, went back to my desk, printed out a picture of the Sandow, the Olympian medal, and hung it on my desk. And I have done this since. It was literally like a switch was flipped, and I just knew this is what I wanted to do.
I love it. It's like Jordan's version of a vision board. You start printing shit out and looking at
you. Exactly. So, I kind of look at it too, I may have gotten into it late. And, when I look at my physique and my progression, I kind of tell people it's almost like I had to go through the football athlete jock fat boy phase because I never had that. So it's like I had to spend a lot of extra time developing my physique to the point where it is now, where now it's kind of just, we're dialed in and we're running like a machine. We finally entered the realm of a bodybuilder and bodybuilding at this point.
Do you feel like getting a later start helps you with mental maturity heading into it?
Absolutely. And I think that's where I feel like I benefited as well as, not only did I get a later start, had a few life lessons, was able to organize my life a little better, not necessarily perfect, but better, a little better financial understanding, already had a job, some of my own support, stability, and social media wasn't as active then. Back then you were lucky if you could put a 15-second video on Instagram when I started bodybuilding. So, I think being closed off to a lot of the external factors and, having to just mature and, figure things out along the way really helped me develop to where I am now. Information's free these days, but, it still can come at a cost because, what information is valid, and it seems like guys are younger and younger starting with this, but they may not necessarily have the financial backing or, they're not done with school yet, their minds are in multiple directions at that point. And I really feel, like you said, that later start, because I came into it when I was 21. So I was still gung-ho of a kid a little bit. So the ego side took over in the beginning some, but I think it helped me mature at a slightly faster rate with it all because I had to support myself. I didn't have, my parents that I was living with or, that kind of infrastructure to go with. It was like, okay, I got to pay my bills and that's a priority, but how do I fit this in with that and making it all evolve and work together?
Yeah, I like that you're bringing up the financial side of things because I feel like that's not talked about a lot. what are some things, especially with the bodybuilding division, I feel like there's more expenses sometimes than maybe other divisions. What are some things that younger competitors that are getting into the sport may not think about financially heading in?
For me, like I said, for me, it's been a learning curve. I'm always tends to be one of those people that learn the hard way. But, to me, that's a blessing in disguise because, I've learned from it, but it gives me an understanding in simple terms to be able to, give back to others. And, there's a lot of, I look at bodybuilding very much the iceberg concept. People just see the surface up, basically our physiques. They see the muscles, they see this, they see that. But, I don't think what these guys realize is, first off, the sacrifice of time. The biggest understanding was time management. There's still a possibility to do a lot of stuff, but when you're younger and getting into it, realize, what do you truly want? Do you want to put the efforts to become a top level athlete, champion, that direction, or do you still want to have, the freedom to do whatever it is that you want running around? So that's, to me, that's one of the biggest costs and realizations, not necessarily financial costs, but the cost of your time, and how you learn to devote that and spend that, because it is time consuming. You never get to walk away from this or truly be away from it. Unlike other sports, football practice, you come home and you can pick up McDonald's on the way if you want, and and just chill. Or a good athlete's probably gonna go eat a steak dinner, probably something a little more quality. But at the end of the day, they get home and they can step away from that. So I think the biggest thing people have to realize is the amount of time that actually goes into devoted to this craft. Because it's a 24/7. It's your sleep, it's your eating, it's your breathing even. So much plays a role into that. And then, realizing there's other costs associated, like, health has become a huge thing for me. When I got in, I was classic 21-year-old gung ho. I'm like, we're just gonna full send everything. It's all good. What's blood work? What's this? What's that? You have to realize all these things cost money. If you're starting out, you may not have a good insurance plan, or you may not have a job that has insurance. So now you're looking at blood work. To me, it's one of the most vital costs that you can spend money on. That, if there's something to spend money on, that's one thing to spend it on. It's not all the supplements. It's knowing your health is in order. And, a lot of these guys may not realize, you do blood work, say you do it minimum 4 times a year, every 4 months. That's 3 times a year. You're looking at, maybe, if you're not pocket expense of, $300 every blood work. So now you're at $1,000 just in blood work a year. And, it's not so much that things are expensive. It'll nickel and dime you if you're not careful. Walking into the grocery store, understanding, a generic brand may be equivalent to a name brand, but you're so triggered by that name brand, like, I have to have this as a self-image, when, just buying the store brand is sometimes actually a better quality if you actually look at it, and realizing, it's not what people think. It's not, the brand that I have, the shirt that I have, things like that, is, shop smart. Just because someone else can use, a name brand cream of rice, some people may grind their own. You know what I mean? It's like, it's all navigating those things, because in the end, it's going to add up. So understanding, there's food costs, there's health costs, all these things, even before, you start getting into, some of the enhanced side of it all, is realizing there's a lot of underlying costs. I mean, even your gym clothes are going to start adding up. I go through 2 outfits a day, and you don't realize you do 2 outfits a day for 6 months. Those clothes aren't going to be the same clothes anymore either. So, there's a lot of little things to me that I feel like, most people are unaware of. And then they start, nickel and diming themselves because, they only the end result. They only see that tip of the iceberg. And, the internet says, take this, take that. And, they blew all their money on that. Next thing you know, their health's out of order, but they can't even, afford to fix their health. Now, progress just stagnated. and I think it starts getting this like perpetual routine of trying to progress, but you can't because you can't afford it. But so to me, that's one of the biggest things is understanding there's a lot of underlying costs with the sport. I mean, you and I have talked about it. It really is, especially at some of these lower levels too, when you're trying to figure out it's a luxury sport. It truly is. It's like I use the analogy a lot of time. It's like, just because I have friends that race cars and stuff, they see us posting physique updates or this and that, and you ask a guy that races a car and drag I'm like, hey, how do I get into that? How much it cost? Blah blah. And they tell you they got 100K, just under the hood. But they're proud of that. But it's one of those things, every sport, every hobby is going to have costs associated with it, and you have to, you don't make your life fit around bodybuilding. You allow bodybuilding to mesh with your life, and do it in a way that works and is healthy. Because if you start getting stressed, it's gonna affect your progress from a hormonal standpoint to a mental standpoint, and then you may just end up getting burnt out all over because you didn't realize that blood work may cost you $1,000 a year.
So. Yeah, man, there's a lot of valuable stuff in all of that. They do say time is money, so it is important to kind of ride that balance with time, the time you spend in what's going to generate money and income versus what you're spending into bodybuilding, because it's very easy to you're so dedicated to the craft of bodybuilding where you start to sacrifice things that are going to be bringing in income to support that. So it is a really delicate balance, right? And then I like what you mentioned, blood work as well, which is a very, very crucial piece, especially if you're an enhanced athlete. And then it's like, and then you mentioned the clothing too. So if you're spending $350 on every dark sport drop, but you're not spending $350 on your blood work, like you may have your priorities out of order a little bit.
Exactly. It's okay to wear a graphic tee to the gym. I promise.
And then you mentioned racing cars too. And we're basically like our own race cars. Like we're putting the parts in under the hood of our own race car, which is our body essentially, and like buying like all the clothing and stuff and all the expensive drops is probably going to be like putting rims on a car when the transmission's falling apart, right? So
exactly. It may look good, pretty on the outside, but it won't even get you down a quarter-mile track.
Yeah, exactly, man. So I really like all of that. That was really valuable stuff. You mentioned Branch Warren. Is there any other big inspirations you had when you were getting into bodybuilding?
I've always really just had a competitive nature. Prior to bodybuilding, I actually did martial arts for 8 years. So, between the military and martial arts, I feel like that's where a lot of my discipline stemmed from. But, there was always that sense of that competitive nature, even, I grew up as, a military kid. So, I was kind of isolated into what I was capable of doing and what I could do. But I always had this like sense of wanting to be strong and like be the best. When I was a kid, my term of strength and knowledge was the military. So I was like, we're going special forces. So I used to walk around with a backpack on all the time that was weighted, walk around with fuel cans around our boat growing up. I was like, there's just something in me that just drove me to like, I always thought it was funny because when I was younger, I always used to look at myself and I'm like, there's something wrong with my physique. Like I have a longer neck for a reason. Like I've just felt like my body had all these gaps. And then it's like, as I've evolved in bodybuilding, I was like, it's almost like it was what I was meant to do, because it's like all those empty spots that I saw have started to fill. So it was almost like there's like this void, and it was like, it's weird because like I said, I didn't come into bodybuilding like most people do. It was just like I just had like this internal drive for it. And the more I've done it, I have a tendency to do everything the hard way, but learn in the process. And I feel like it's allowed me to, give back differently. So, as much as it's a drive for myself, it's a passion in a way to be able to give back to others. I want to see people succeed, because I truly believe bodybuilding isn't just a physical sense, it's a mental sense. And if you can really learn to adapt and grow the mind too, and I've always been big on that, always been self-taught with everything I've done, is, that's where it all starts. The win, whether it be the win and winning, making your bed, or the win and winning a bodybuilding show, it all really starts there. And, I think that's one of my biggest driving factors too, is, understanding that. And it's almost like I'm a mental competition with myself daily. And it's, so that drive is, is what I like, taking things to where, it's uncomfortable, and where most people are uncomfortable, thriving in that environment.
Yeah, being self-taught and learning the hard way with a lot of stuff. Can you remember the first like major challenge you had with bodybuilding?
So it's funny you say that. So there's definitely been quite a few. But probably one of the biggest things, and I'm going to probably go on the physical side of this, just because it was such a setback for me, was, I feel like we get in there and we sling weights, and, I truly had to learn how to lift, by trial and error. 2 years ago, I couldn't even leg extension a one plate. My knee was so bad. You witnessed it. I used to talk to him like, hey, what, can you look at this? Like, is my alignment off? Just really trying to figure out, where things were wrong, because the reality is, whether you're lifting 5 pounds or 200 pounds, or if you're 150 pounds or 300 pounds, lifting actually shouldn't hurt. You shouldn't be in pain. If you're in pain, it's a sign that something else is wrong. And that's where, I really tried to take control of my physique, and I started changing the most, was, dropping the ego, learning the hard way, and going back to those foundational basics, and, learning how the muscle works. I've spent a lot of time understanding, how the body works, but not necessarily with a master's degree with a bunch of terminology, but, understanding in the elementary form, like your toe is connected to your eye, like all these little things that people don't realize. And I really had to learn myself. And because, as much guidance and help as I had from everyone, it's, at the end of the day, it's your body, and you know what you're feeling. And you may not necessarily be able to convey that to someone. And, someone may say, lift this way, that way, do this, do that. But I think really taking the time to break myself down mentally and physically to a point to understand how the body functions a little bit better is what, and, only squatting 225 for, a month straight, it sucked. I didn't even want to post that. I was like, man, it's borderline embarrassing. It was hard. But, the progression I've got from that into where I am now, just showed how much value was in that. And, like I said, learning the hard way of, I just wanted to lift all this weight, but, I got to the point where I couldn't even lift anymore. It's too painful to lift. I was, and late, my leg size was always like a point of anxiety for me, because I'm like, you gotta have legs, but I couldn't train my legs. So, it was a hard learning point of, taking that step back, understanding the mechanics of the body, and then building back up from there. And what that's allowed me to do is, see how many of us bodybuilders have similar issues, and being able to give back now, in simple terms. You and I talk all the time in the gym, and, being able to give those cues in a way that someone understands, to me, carries a lot more value. And I think, having to figure out my body and figure out bodybuilding and basically learn how to lift all over again, it was hard, but, it's been very rewarding now.
Yeah, injuries are definitely a risk in this sport, and they can be one of the biggest setbacks we have. And setbacks can be kind of a slingshot into future progress a lot of the times. And one of the biggest learning curves for a lot of athletes is that internal versus external stimulus. So they're like thinking about moving the weight rather than what's happening inside of the body. And sometimes those injuries can be like a rude awakening of like, I need to focus more on internal stimulus rather than what's happening on the outside, right? So
Exactly.
So that probably like opened your eyes a little bit too to focusing a little bit more on mechanics and how you're loading and form. And I see you in the gym now, how meticulous you are with execution. Do you think that that was a key driver towards that, as well as experiencing injuries in the past?
Oh, 100%. Because, now it's almost like a driving factor if I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to feel that pain again. And it's a funny analogy. It's almost like a life analogy. Like, you don't want to feel that pain again. So it propels you forward to constantly try to be better. But I definitely think, that played a huge role in, getting my physique to where it is, and, understanding that, because, in the past, I was like, okay, only lift the weight where it's comfortable to lift it, and that's where we're strong. But, as we've talked and you've seen training evolve, I'm a big proponent in extreme end ranges. And like you said, being able to contract that muscle and initiate it at the very insertion point versus just all these external factors of loading the muscle, that, if you can contract the muscle of the insertion, 225 on a squat is going to give you a heck of a lot more progress than 405 on a bar. Because now, that stimulus is, to be able to contract that way, everything else has to be in line. So that internal stimulus, your brace, everything else comes into play now. And when you hit that insertion point, the activation, to me, and the force you can get out of that is far greater than any load you could put on a bar at that point.
Absolutely. And muscles are what move the body, and muscles contracting are what move the body. So loading those end ranges, being able to own those end ranges and strengthen those end ranges aren't just good for bodybuilding, but that's good for long-term health in general, and movement patterns, and can translate into any area of fitness, whether it's bodybuilding or athletics or anything. So I think that there's a lot of value there, and you're going to get a lot of gains out of overloading, especially like the length and position of muscles. And we're seeing a lot of evidence that we already kind of knew about as bodybuilders. That, sometimes science can be a little bit behind on these things. But yeah. So we talked about setbacks, but what was your like first success? Do you remember?
Ooh, it's funny because I've had some really, cool experiences with bodybuilding. It's brought me a lot of places. There's a lot of highs, but my biggest success was probably last year. Like I say, and it was in so many aspects. It was from fixing all these injuries or pains and nags, so to say, to lift completely pain free. To the mental growth was a huge achievement for me. And carrying that, and being able to actually operate as a professional, and carry that over. And to me, as much as winning the overall Battle of Texas and fourth in my national debut, those were huge key accomplishments, that I reflect on daily. I still go back and look at the pictures and relive those memories. But biggest real accomplishment for me was understanding the day-to-day win. That it's almost like we get lost in this goal of like, we want to be a professional bodybuilder, or we want to be this with bodybuilding, we want to be that, or we want this place on the stage. And we get so caught up in that we forget that the day-to-day life is just passing us by. And for me, my biggest accomplishment was realizing that and understanding that, and almost trying to make time slow down in a way. And, really living in the moments of bodybuilding and realizing I am living my dream. Like, you see yourself and say, oh, dieting sucks. The off season sucks. I'm eating so much food. I can't wait for prep to start. But, realizing in those moments of eating those meals and doing all that, this is it. This is what you're working for. And you're living it day to day. And to me, like I said, as much as Battle of Texas and Nationals meant to me this year, and how much I love being on stage, I absolutely love competing. That's just a finite part of the whole picture. And to me, my biggest accomplishment was probably realizing that, and just operating day to day, in a way that progresses me forward.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned conducting yourself like a professional, because we talk about if you want to be a pro athlete, you should probably start acting like a pro, right? And I love everything else you said as well. Your motto is discipline over everything, correct?
Yep.
So how did that become where did that come from, and how did it become your guiding principle? Because it sounds like that's really what you live lifestyle wise in general.
So it's one of those things that, it was probably just a seed that existed that, sprouted over time. I'm fortunate enough to be coached under Ben now. And, he's got a pretty good solid mantra on things, when it comes to bodybuilding. He's been around for a while, and truthfully, probably some of my discipline over everything mantra, it was 2023 and 2022 were not my easiest years. Had to overcome a lot, whether it be through depression, just physical things and stuff like that. And, I attribute, rest in peace, Neil Curry, his mantra was machine mentality. And, I associated with that a lot. And, I think that is what kind of stemmed into my whole discipline over everything mantra. Because it was kind of similarly related. And, I knew the only way things would get better is if I executed. It started with not hitting a snooze button on my alarm. That was the first thing I started practicing. I refuse, and to this day I will not hit a snooze on my alarm. And then when your feet hit the ground, like, I'll sit on the end of my bed, don't get me wrong, but there'll be like, oh, lay down. It's off season. You're only doing 20 minutes of cardio. You don't have to get to the gym as early, blah, blah. These thoughts do play. But I realize you don't have to look at that whole elephant. It's the discipline in the little actions that will later carry over to the bigger actions. So to me, the whole discipline do is truly discipline over everything. Like, it's discipline over, do you wipe the piss off the seat? Do you brush your teeth? Did you make your bed? Did you get to the gym on time? Did you get your meals into the day? All these small actions, slowly start to compound into the greater picture. And, to me, whether it be the words out of our mouth, how we treat people, whether you're religious or not, whether you have faith in God or not, all these different things, to truly be successful takes discipline, because it's human nature to go freaking berserk and be completely disordered. If you look at a child, it's chaos but as parents and, teachers and everything, discipline is kind of like the foundation of everything. If you look at it, successful business guys aren't successful because, they had an idea. They were disciplined on their idea. You're not a successful coach because, you have this vision of like what coaching is and, how you want your plan to look and what you want to be able to send clients and things like that. It took discipline. It took action. It took, some sleepless nights, it took some things. But I've realized the beauty in that is, if you can truly master some of that self-discipline, life actually gets easier, because now you're not looking for external forces to drive you. You're not looking for motivational videos. You're not looking for the pat on the back. You're not looking for this. You begin, the discipline, almost a thought, a change of way of thinking. And you start operating in okay, if I execute on this, these 20 things down the road are going to be so much better for me. Or I could sleep in and now I have anxiety because I'm late. Now my meals are late. Now I'm even more anxious. Mm-hmm. So, to me, it really started to show me the whole picture. And if you execute on those little things, they'll compound into the greater things. And then, that discipline becomes habit. And the things you had to be disciplined before are just your everyday habits now. And you can take that discipline and that hard stuff and apply it elsewhere, because you're not having to use all that energy for something else because it became a habit in your life. So, like I said, getting up, making my bed, and going to cardio is a habit now. It takes me a few minutes to get out, some days more than others, but the essence of that is still there because it became a habit. And that was all bred out of, just having a little bit of discipline, being able to tell yourself no once in a while. Because I think, that's where some of our discipline lacks is, culture has become such a give me, I need, or, satisfying feelings, or, dopamine levels, or, some sort of, external force. But, if we take discipline and apply that internally, suddenly you realize you don't need all those external factors anymore. And I think that's where that's really stemmed. And, it's just kind of become my driving force at this point.
I love that. And I love your mantra, and I love how you were kind of discussing the relationship between habits and discipline, because discipline is kind of the catalyst where we're doing something that we don't necessarily feel like doing in the moment, right? And we're doing it anyway. So like hitting the snooze or starting to make your bed or whatever these little habits are. So you're basically setting the stage for these habits. And then they become so routine that it's just something you just inherently do every day without even thinking, right? And then you're able to stack more and more habits. And it becomes such a positive thing on so many levels, where it's compounding into the goals that you have set out for yourself. You also mentioned a couple times kind of when you're more chaotic and lacking discipline and lacking those habits, that it kind of bleeds into other areas of your life negatively too, where you're pulling from other people or doing all these different things and maybe negatively impacting others as well. And so doing these things isn't just necessarily a selfish act, it's selfless too, because the more you have your life in order, the less you're negatively impacting others, the less you're taking away from others, the more you can give back to others, right? And you mentioned that a couple times as well. So it's all this cohesive thing that just makes for a better, more impactful life. And then you also mentioned anxiety and depression too. And those little tasks are going to give you so much more sense of fulfillment and purpose within your daily routine. And that's going to help drive you out of that depressive state. And then also you mentioned anxiety, which is like leaning too far into the future, where you're like stressed out about what's to come. And a lot of that comes from lack of preparation and a lack of that discipline too. So these are all, it's so powerful to have like a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of well-being, and being able to positively impact others. And it's just a positive thing all around. And so a lot of people will see these kinds of things as like a selfish act at first, but really you see it as like this net positive for everybody around you, and you're able to impact others. And the more you stack these things, the more impact you can make, and the bigger of an impact you'll have on the tribe you have around you, and then they can impact others around them. So it's a very powerful thing, right?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, and it's a cool thing to watch firsthand. I've seen it with yourself, I've seen it with everyone around me, and you mentioned it too, it's you start drawing that kind of likeness and realizing, like you said, you're not necessarily having to use your own energy to make other people happy. It's, you take some of that energy for yourself, put it in yourself, and next thing you know, you suddenly look at your clock, you're watching, like you're sitting on the couch and like, wait, why do I have free time? Or, I suddenly, impact people in a different way, or, I'm able to give back to people because, I wasn't so caught up on this give, but giving back is necessarily giving to yourself. And if you give to yourself, that, and have that structure, to me, it's beautiful, to be honest.
I always say you can't pour from an empty cup, and you have to fill your own cup before you can pour into others. And the more you stack these habits and you're positively taking care of your own life, and you have a lot of structure and discipline and positive habits, like your cup's just going to be overflowing. And like you said, it just becomes effortless to give back to others, right?
Exactly, man. I love it.
Love that. What are some other things in your daily routine that you may not have mentioned yet that are important habits for you?
Honestly, it's more the behind the scenes stuff. Most people, like I said, they just see the meals and the weightlifting, but every morning on top of doing cardio, one thing that's been huge for me, in multiple ways is, I spend 45 minutes some days doing a full like mobility routine. And to me, part of that just became, the better your body feels, the better you'll feel. And honestly, as much as I hate doing it sometimes, it's, I walk away from that time in the morning so refreshed. I mean, if you ever work on spinal mobility and then go, just stand in the fresh air for a minute afterwards. It's amazing how good you feel. So, for me, I spend a lot of time doing, mobility stuff. You hear body work being, an important aspect of bodybuilding, and it plays into the cost as well. And, a lot of time we need body work because something's wrong. And, I may just, while I'm watching TV, just randomly get on the floor with a lacrosse ball or a roller and just start sitting on stuff for a minute. And, realizing a massage isn't necessarily going to fix you. It's going to feel good in the moment, but the knot's going to come right back. And, once I started understanding that a knot in a muscle, you can massage that all you want, but unless you target what's causing the knot, it's just going to keep coming back and you're going to keep being uncomfortable. So I probably spend an obnoxious amount of time like doing different mobility stretch, releases, different things. I have my warm-up routine at the gym too. But it's become fun for me because, like I said, the better your body feels and can move, the better you feel in general. Like, one of the biggest things, and I know as bodybuilders we lack, is thoracic mobility. And the more and more I've opened up my spine and, rib cage and thoracic mobility, that is probably the best feeling in the world, is to have a mobile spine. And, being able to be 280 pounds and sit and breathe and not feel like your chest is compressed against you because you're so tight and your rib cage can't expand. So for me, those are a lot of, personal things that, may seem a little bit neurotic, and what they could be, but I enjoy it. And, like I said, for me, it's kind of taught me how to use my body and allowed me to develop. And, at that point, I'm also not relying on, oh my gosh, there's a massage person available. And you spend $200 and you get an hour of work and you feel great and you drink some water, and the next day and you go to your training session and you still got and the knot comes back all of a sudden. But, fortunately, I've had some phenomenal, bodywork people that have kind of guided me in the right direction. And, I'll message with them to get feedback. I'll like, hey, I found this exercise. What do you think of this? That's probably one of the biggest things I do behind the scenes that people don't see is, I'm very neurotic in keeping the muscle and skeletal system actually healthy too.
I think that helps with a lot of internal awareness too. So the self-awareness of like inside, and that can translate into the focus of internal stimulus in the gym as well. Do you think that helps a lot with you?
1000%. And probably one of the biggest things that I got into, and I know you and I talked about it quite a bit, is really core stability and, breathing. And, the more I've learned how to stabilize my core and use the muscles in their intended purpose, honestly, the better my lifts have been. This is probably one topic that comes up so much is, as bodybuilders, we probably have a lot of anterior pelvic rotation. We tend to be hips back, we have a hard time pulling them under us. And, there's multiple ways to get your pelvis in place. One is, you can have weak hip flexors, or you can literally have poor abdominal control. Or, I saw a post recently, a lot of people, when they're doing chest supported stuff, they get winded. Whether it be like a chest supported T-bar or different things like that. And they're like, oh, it's pressing into my chest, this and that, and honestly, I will brag on this, it's an issue I don't have. And a lot of that has stemmed from learning how to properly brace your core, how to breathe, and understanding that your lungs and your body can expand in multiple directions. They can expand this way, it can expand in your back, your rib cage can come up, it can come down, your diaphragm can go down, it can come up and go up, understand all those things, and like understanding the internal core of how the body works probably has elevated my lifting like tenfold. Because now I can be in these braced positions and now I can breathe. So you're getting more oxygen in the muscle during the set, you're getting better anabolic response, you're getting better ATP. VO2. The list goes on the number of benefits, all just because you know how to brace your core properly.
Mhm.
And a lot of this extra work I've done and, realizing, hey, I can pull my pelvis into place with my lower abs and let my hip flexors do the work when I'm squatting goes a lot better than trying to pull everything in place, with the muscles that aren't necessarily intended for doing that. And realizing, the biggest thing it's taught me too is you have a lot more muscles than you realize. And, a lot of stabilizers, a lot of extra muscles that do things. But we get so caught up on just the ones that we see visually.
Mm-hmm.
But if we work on the other little ones, it's kind of cool to see some of the detail come out in the other muscles too, because now there's extra stuff going on. But now you're actually firing and utilizing those muscles properly and in a better way. And to me, it's perpetual. You start doing mobility work, you start feeling better, your lifts start getting better. Your lifts start getting better, and start learning, internal core control, different things like that, stabilizers. Now your body just feels better all in general, and now you start progressing. And you can progress pain-free, and you're not, in these weird situations needing a massage 10 times a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's such a big focus on extremities because we think push, pull, legs, right? So it's like all extremity stuff, but I think the spine and the trunk is very overlooked. And I talk a lot about, I'm a stickler with my athletes when it comes to pelvis positioning, especially with lower body movements, especially with glute bridges and hip thrusts. I think that's something that's overlooked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just getting full spinal extension at the bottom end of a hip thrust or a glute bridge, and you're having to like basically pull your pelvis back into position, you're turning it into like a weighted crunch essentially in some, right? And same thing with squat patterns, leg presses, and rib cage positioning with presses as well. I think it's such an overlooked topic, and I'm really glad that you brought that up. Is there any other like specific things when it comes to training that you think that people are overlooking in terms of positioning? I love that we talked about rib cage and pelvis. Is there anything else that you've been kind of focused on lately?
Not so much positioning, but I mean it kind of plays a role with it. But I guess my two biggest things now have been, and I'm always big on core control. Because a few years ago, shout out to Nick Gloff, actually, he's a phenomenal lifter, very smart. He got me lifting without a weight belt. And probably one of the best things I've ever done is learn how to train without a weight belt. Because I feel too often, we see people rely on it, or it's used incorrectly so often. You see people, they get up next to like the squat rack and they pinch it on there and they cinch it down as tight as they can get. But the reality is you're actually supposed to be able to put your whole hand between your stomach and the belt. Like it's a tool. And to me, it's actually created a lot of bad lifting patterns because you become reliant on that. To me, it enhances anterior pelvic tilt and weaker hip flexors, and also poor transverse abdominal control, things like that. So one thing I'm very aware of, and this obviously plays into rib position and positioning too, is keeping the core compact while you're lifting. And that goes into the breathing too, is like you can hold your abs and take a full breath without your stomach expanding. It's possible. Like people may debate me on this, but I promise it is possible. So, for me, that's one of my biggest focuses. And then, as funny as it sounds, my second focus is my feet, and truthfully, your big toe. And I think foot health is highly neglected and underrated in bodybuilding. And as funny as it sounds, one of the other big things that I've been working on is, while I lift and even just day-to-day activity, is eye position. All these actually work synergistically together. And, if you have a foot that, can't spread right or has poor tibial rotation, that can all go all the way up and affect, your eyes and your vision, head posture, and, all of it's related. And I found I had a bad habit of when I walk places that I would stare at the ground right in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
which, coincides with, looking at your phone like this all day, doing things like that in a position where your head is down. But when I was watching TV, my head would be down, but I'd be looking up with my eyes and things like that. So, I took awareness into that, and I started walking when I would go on walks or do my cardio, is focus on keeping my eyes straight ahead. And what that's done is it's brought my head up, it's brought my chest back into place. And, it has a domino effect. So as dumb and, meticulous, weird as it sounds, I think there's a lot of aspects of the body that we overlook, that if we make some simple corrections and just do some basic little warm-up exercises, can have some extremely long-term and benefits in how you progress.
Absolutely. I like that you mentioned eye position, because that's not something I usually think about at all. And that's probably something I'm going to start incorporating a little bit. And I hate to sound arrogant or like a little bit cocky about this, but I really feel like I'm ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff, because I was talking about foot health so long ago before anybody.
Yes.
I was like taking my shoes off in the gym, and I was getting yelled at by employees, like all kinds of stuff. And I was wearing toe spacers and like the barefoot shoes and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I was like, bodybuilding, and I feel like I'm always like ahead of the curve on this stuff. I never get enough credit, and then everybody starts doing it, and they're like, "Oh, this is the new thing." I'm like, man, I stopped focusing on that like 5 years ago, but all right.
And that's probably why I enjoy talking to you, or like a lot of the conversations we do have about stuff is, because, you are that way and understand that and have seen that and know that. And it's like, like I said, and I'm doing kind of the hard way, and we're kind of like meeting the middle with some of it. And, it makes for some really cool conversation, but, it's really an eye opener too, of how much we're actually leaving on the table as athletes and bodybuilding too, because of that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have there's a stigma on like the over optimizing versus like whatever the people are. There's like the two camps. There's like the optimizers, and then there's like the squat, bench press, and deadlift.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but anyway, I think that people need to understand that when bodybuilders become so advanced like yourself, where you are trying to squeeze every tiny percentage out of progress as possible, because you've come so far and you've been milking progress for so long, these tiny nuances and percentages are what are going to continue to drive progress for you, right? And I feel like that's very overlooked, where people poo-poo, like they'll think that we're overcomplicating things, or like too focused on nuances, when really like it's what we have to do to elicit more progress when we've come so far and really master the basics, right?
100%. It's funny you say that, because, I have a few close friends, that I talk to in the bodybuilding world. And, we always joke, we're like fighting for that 0.0001%, doing things like, okay, I'm going to go sit in a red light sauna. Not sure if this actually does anything, but if it gives me that 0.01%, we're going to go for it.
Exactly, man. It comes to a point where it's like, what else are we supposed to do? Like, we've perfected things to a point where, in order for us to progress, and we're also obsessed with progression, which is maybe sometimes not the most healthy thing, but it's going to drive us towards huge goals, which is like we're the kinds of people that accomplish things that others won't, because we are that way, right?
Exactly.
So we've talked a lot about training. What's some things outside of English muffins you like to do in terms of nutrition? We know you love your English muffins, but what are some other like dietary stuff you really have focus on, like similar to the training nuances that we've discussed?
So here's a phenomenal avenue to go down too, because people are going to really see how neurotic and meticulous I am after this podcast. As funny as it sounds, I probably one of the biggest things, and about me, and this probably we'll segue into this, is gut health. I am such a proponent on gut health, just because I've been at both ends of the spectrum with it. I've been on the end of the spectrum where I'm bloated, and you eat a meal and it feels like it's up here, and you get a meal down, you throw up, and suddenly became this thing in bodybuilding that we drink our food and if you throw up a meal, it's okay because that's normal because you're eating so much food and then you just go do it again later. And I was like, hey, something's this is not fun. This really isn't fun. So I've become very, meticulous with my food. I don't eat very exciting. I will say that. I'm the basics, rice, fish, chicken, eggs, beef, cream of rice. But probably one of the most meticulous and biggest things I do outside the scope of, just the types of food. I don't eat out except for my refeeds, but even then I try to do like higher quality foods, go to places I know digest well is, and I am proud to say this, I have not touched a Splenda packet, a stevia packet, any type of artificial sweetener, any type of soda since sometime before my shows last year. And to me, removing those things, it wasn't to be, oh, I'm hardcore. It was none of that. It was to, you said, we're at this point, I'm trying to optimize things in every avenue possible. But what I also realized, and this kind of cool when you learn this about the body is, we're designed to taste food, and in that tasting process, our body creates different enzymes, different things from our saliva glands, to our stomach enzymic activity. Eating rice versus a potato is going to create different things within your body. So I've really taken that into consideration, and by removing some of these additives, they're chemicals and they are addictive, and they create certain neurological issues in the brain and cravings and things like that. And I started doing more of a plain cream of rice now with my fruit, and at first I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, why did I do this? But you after eating that for a couple weeks now, it's like you suddenly realize how good fruit tastes, or like all these different things. You start tasting food for what it is. To me, that's probably one of the things that I've learned how to do that probably plays a really good role in my digestion and health, is because now, I'm enjoying my food. And if you can enjoy your food and your meals, to me, that's going to carry you a long way, because it is monotonous, especially the off season. You're eating a high volume and you're not necessarily going to want to, but if you keep all those in line, and keep your digestion where it needs to be, you're suddenly going to want to eat those meals. Your appetite's going to come in play, and suddenly you're not having to take all these pro hormones or weird farms that people are talking about to have an appetite. I'm like, man, you're on 20 peptides just so you can eat. I'm like, what are all the adverse effects with that? And I'm probably on a third of, may run a third of what some guys do, and I'm over here eating 500-gram rice meals before I train, and we get to the gym and can slam 100-gram intra and we're not bloated. So I think that's one of the biggest things outside of training, is really getting meticulous on my gut health.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing how much of a role that plays, because gut health isn't just about how you digest food. It's, if you're an enhanced athlete, it's how you metabolize all the different compounds. If your gut's not right, you may be missing certain hormones and enzymes that play a role in your serotonin, your like depression, anxiety, different things like that. Your cortisol can all originate in the gut. So, I kind of look at my gut health the way I looked at my training. I took it back to the foundational roots, stripped it down to the very basics, and just kind of built up from that into a point where, it's everyday life, and kind of like it's just maintain it. I was telling you the other day, I was like, I feel like my stomach's a little bit off, but I'm not sure, because, I've done this gut health protocol and blah, blah. So, I was at HEB, and, I didn't want to wait for Amazon stuff, and, took the time to research the different probiotics that they had, because, now that I have a better understanding. And, one of the other things, as funny as it sounds, is normally I do pineapple with all my meals, is sometimes if your body has a craving, you need to listen to it.
Mhm.
And, you know, it kind of coincides with the gut thing, and people can take this how they want, but whatever. Is I had a weird craving for mango one day, and then I had a weird craving for papaya. And funny thing about those fruits is can play a huge role in digestive and enzymic activity. I did that for about 2 meals and felt like a completely different person. Just
Man.
by keeping the gut healthy and actually listening to what the body needed.
Mhm.
You know, it was craving those exact fruits because they carried a certain property for a reason. You know, it's why it's almost kind of like the same concept. You know, you hear a lot of people on prep. It's so wrapped around fats. Like if they taste fats or almond butter, they may lose control like a crack addict.
Mhm.
Because your body knows what it's missing. And, you know, off season, you know, if it's 100 grams of pineapple and your body's saying you need 100 grams of papaya, one meal's not going to hurt you. And the benefits you may get from that, because now you have a mental release because you don't have that anxiety of not feeling like crap. Plus, you know, you got your gut back in order.
Mhm.
Now you're training good again and you're happy. So
100%. Yeah,
really,
man. Gut health is paramount. I'm sorry. Keep going.
fine-tuning the gut health is probably huge.
Yeah, and I hate to brag, but the gut health was something I was talking about like 12 years ago. It was another thing, and people were just like, whatever, Sean, that kind of thing. But like I was experimenting with probiotics and even like the apple cider vinegar stuff and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just trying everything because growing up, I was diagnosed with like IBS, which I come to find out was just kind of, you know, a Band-Aid kind of term for just digestional distress. And I was chasing every tiny little thing to fix that. And I went through like my first contest prep, just like my gut was just, I was so uncomfortable all the time, always bloated, always like digestional distress. It was just so, everything was irregular as hell. And going through contest preps just only made it worse. And all the stress of a contest prep and like the lack of nutrient diversity, like you mentioned, papaya and pineapple and these things that have a lot of enzymic activity. And also you mentioned like the mouth, that's where our digestion starts. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. Everybody's thinking about gut down here, but we want to think about the entire microbiome. We are essentially sacks of bacteria. And that bacteria profile is incredibly important, and it plays a role in so many different things. Serotonin production, you mentioned depression, anxiety, that kind of stuff. Immune function, thyroid function, hormone, the way that your hormones are metabolized, especially estrogen as well. All of these things happen in the gut and are stemming from the gut. And a lot of the downstream trickle effect, negative downstream trickle effect, usually stems from a lot of stress stuff. So like chronic stress over long periods of time is usually causing that negative downstream effect into the microbiome, throwing off that balance. That can come from training, cardio, prolonged dieting phases, all that kind of stuff. So what are some things, we've talked a lot about stimulus and things you do for stimulating your body and causing damage, but what are some things you do to help manage the stress and recovery better?
Honestly, it's like, you know, this was probably a work in progress for me. But it's, you know, luckily I'm in a position where I can train middle of the day. So, you know, I try to really take care of where I need to at the beginning of the day, work, you know, meetings, things like that, train. And, you know, I'll probably get, you know, in the evenings I'll do some work and stuff. But, you know, one of the biggest things I try to do is when I get home from training is actually just take some time to just sit down. You know, don't run around trying to get my meal cooked and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Like, I know I have time. So, you know, I just put my body through whatever hell I put it through. You know, I come home, shower, and, you know, I take that time to just sit and relax. You know, the biggest thing when I start my day is, you know, everything starts with the mind. So, you know, I love just, you know, I do my cardio, relax, and then I come home and, you know, kind of make my first meal and sit and, you know, I'll usually do like a devotional then is kind of like, you know, read and stuff like that, take that time. And then right after I eat too is, you know, I take a cup of coffee and I actually sit down in my office or on my living room couch and may just turn on like a dumb show or no TV and just sit for 30 minutes and just, just sit, let the body just relax. It's okay to just sit sometimes.
Mhm.
And then, I am a homebody, so, I'm a junkie for movies. I admit it, but honestly, one of my favorites. I play Mario Kart. I feel like we're so hard on ourselves sometimes, especially in this sport. It's so meticulous, and we train hard. Is when I'm not doing that, and you can witness it firsthand. Is I like to just be a kid. I will be goofy, I'll be whatever, but when I'm not locked in on that, I just let myself be me, play video games, one thing that I found that's been really huge, especially with this, outside the scope of digestion is, just going on a 10-minute walk outside in the afternoon, or after one of my meals in the evening. I found that to be productive, because then you're not, a lot of time when we sit, we have a tendency to just let our minds wander, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So, trying to keep myself somewhat active, I found has really helped me be able to unwind from things. And I think some of it is going to stem all the way back to that discipline is, it's okay to go out of town. Just be prepared, go out, go do things, spend time with people. That's probably one of my biggest things that I realize now is, prep, we do have to get pretty locked in. But if you want to do this professionally and have longevity, and, realize there's people around you that do care, and don't shun them away, and, have fun with them. You and I was like, hey, want to go get a burger and cheating all night? Let's go do it. Let's go shoot the shit. You know what I mean? Like, things like that, learning how to release and have something that separates you from bodybuilding. Another thing for me is, I work as a software engineer day to day, but it's also kind of like a hobby for me. So I think it's very important to have a hobby or some sort of activity that you do that isn't bodybuilding related, but you enjoy so much, or can get into it so much that you actually have to look at the time and be like, oh crap, I need to go eat my meal. That way you can truly separate yourself, because like I said, otherwise you don't get away from it, because it is 24/7. And if you're just sitting on a couch, you're probably just going to be thinking about it all day long. I know I have a tendency to. So, having those little activities, so to say, that can kind of just focus your mind elsewhere, to me is huge. One thing I actually started doing again, because I am not a proponent of social media in the terms of that's how you should pass your time. It's a tool, it's a platform, but it's not should not be part of how you function in life. Is I started doing Sudoku puzzles again. Something that stimulates the mind, and like I said, actually lets you think on something else for a bit. Actually pull your focus away up. As bad as it sounds, distract yourself. We always, because I think bodybuilding, we're just so locked in. For me, it's just, I have those little things that I do that just, have balance for me. And, whether it be just like, I have toys like this, like I'm a kid, just little nuances that, that just bring you joy in life, that are simple. It doesn't have to be this extravagant, I got to pack 3 meals because I'm going to a theme park today, and now I'm stressed out and didn't have any fun because I don't fit on any rides. No. Play Mario Kart for 30 minutes. You'll be amazed at what it does.
Yeah, man, I'm glad I asked you that. I like asking really advanced athletes kind of what they do in terms of stress management and stuff, because I'm terrible at it myself. Because with my coaching and just being an entrepreneur, I can be a little bit too serious about things sometimes, and maybe not. Like I have a hard time lightening up and just having a good time sometimes. So there's some really powerful stuff there. A lot of it that you mentioned is manipulation of the autonomic nervous system. So like training your in a sympathetic state, fight or flight mode, and then you're intentional when you come home to sit down and bring yourself back into a restful state or the parasympathetic mode. So that's really powerful. You mentioned walks as well. Going on walks can bring you back to more of a parasympathetic state. That's going to help you with digestion as well. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. So we talked about digestive health as well, and that's only going to benefit that area too. So it's all very cohesive. And then you mentioned some stuff that's more stimulating, that's maybe a little bit more kind of escapism, which is a healthy thing a lot of times, right? And being intentional with that, where it's like something that's really lighthearted and going to put you in a good mood, like Mario Kart or Human Toys or whatever it may be. I like to play chess, which maybe is still kind of a little too serious.
Yeah, but it's still that separation, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It forces your mind to think about something else, and I think that's where people may sway on realizing what relaxing is. It's not sitting and doing nothing and trying to turn your brain off. That's not necessarily relaxing, because if anything, that may just stress you out more. To me, relaxing is putting yourself in a state of something you enjoy that you're mentally active and doing, but an hour passes by and it felt like 5 minutes. If that's going on, regardless of the activity you're doing, you're probably relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll play like bullet chess, which is like 1 minute games where you're just playing like very fast, and I'll just play like a ton of people online for like hours sometimes. Like,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I love those kind of things, man.
Yeah, and then connecting with people is very powerful too, because that's going to give you a lot of fulfillment and just community and friendships. Like, we've built a friendship, and now we're here talking on a podcast. So a lot of things can come into fruition from valuable relationships that you build with people and going out to eat. And there's something to be said that's just like very fundamental about sitting at a table or around anything, or like even it would be cool to sit around like a campfire and like eat food with like all your close friends.
Sure.
Like, just connecting with people on such a fundamental level where it's like, hey, we've been out grinding and like on conquest, and we're bringing resources together to sit down and eat a meal. And that's why, like, I feel like there's a lot of that in the South that's very positive. Like, there's like crawfish boils and barbecues and stuff like that. We need to start doing more of that kind of stuff. I think that's.
I'm totally down. It was funny because I was one thing that I want to do, and I thought about actually doing this year, is after nationals, we're gonna go back to nationals. We're gonna go get that title. Is afterwards is get an RV and go tour gyms for 2 weeks.
Oh, that would be awesome, man. I've had times where I'm like tempted to just like drop everything and get one of those little vans, like little van rides out in the US,
Like no plane tickets, don't have to worry stress about my meals, just wherever we end up, we just map out the gyms and we drive for that day and call it good.
It's the simple things, right, bro?
Exactly. That's the key right there. It's if you want an anti-stress life and enjoy life and things like that, I think that's the most key things right there is the simple things. If you can appreciate the simple things, the laugh, whether it be the funny videos we've made, product videos we've made, or just little things like that, it goes a long way, a very long way. And if you can appreciate those little things, every time you can appreciate that, it's it's a little dopamine shots, a little, and you're not getting it from a like on Instagram for a little heart notification. You're getting it from someone else, an interaction, something of value. And it's, to me, it's going to be so much healthier and carry you so far.
I like that you mentioned social media. I'm very intentional with social media. I don't really use it for personal use at all anymore. You don't really see me posting anything personal. And if I do, I think that it's providing some level of value to my athletes. And what are some things that you do to help stay off of social media, or some intentionality behind that?
This is probably one of the hardest things, I struggle with. Is just learning how to put it down. If you go to the bathroom, go back to reading a shampoo bottle. Like, you know what I mean? Or, the statue of the thinking man on the toilet was there for a reason. He wasn't on a phone, he was thinking. If you go into the kitchen and sit down for a meal, one thing I've done is I'll intentionally leave my phone like on the couch or on the counter. If it's something you truly struggle with, leave it out of reach. Because then you're less likely to get bored and start doing one of these. Food, because now it's in reach. If all of a sudden you got to get up and walk across the room, you're less likely going to be on it. And I think that's goes all the way back to where we started with the discipline and the habit forming. And if you start getting used to doing that, suddenly leaving your phone on the counter while you eat, this becomes thoughtless. That just becomes normal. So for me, because it has been a struggle for me, is just leave it somewhere. Whether sometimes I'll leave it on the shelf where all my hats are when I come to the house, and that's probably one of the biggest things I do is just try to not have it near me. Or is one of the biggest things I've done is other than work and text, is I've turned all my notifications off, because I felt there was, if I saw even a text message, next thing I know, my phone's in my hand. Okay, my phone's in my hand. You know what? We'll just swipe over to Instagram while we're at it. Next thing you know, you've been on Instagram for 15 minutes, all because of a text message. So, I really try to limit the notifications that are on my phone down to just what I need. That way, it keeps me from putting the phone in my hand. I try to do little things like that here and there. And then, start coaching yourself, like, and reminding yourself of things like, I'll find myself, sitting on my phone scrolling. I'm like, look at the clock, like 15 minutes of them. I'm like, you know what I could have done with these 15 minutes, and start, changing the way you're outlooking, the way you think, and you start realizing like, man, I'm wasting time for no reason, and life is flying past, and all I've done is this for 2 hours. So I think one of the biggest things I've done is really try to change my way of thinking with it too. And a lot of that stems from just not having it near me. Just when you train, just put it down, put it in a bag, actually force yourself to get away from it, because when you start getting that separation and start filling those dopamine needs and different things correctly, you start becoming less reliant on it. Because a lot of time, the reason we're on it is because, we're trying to feel something, or we're bored or different things like that. And, there's so many other avenues and opportunities that can be filled with that time. And like I said, even this right now, I could have spent, from 12 till now scrolling on Instagram or doing something, or, having this conversation and a podcast, building a healthy relationship and talking about things, exposing things. This, I probably get more dopamine rush out of this and the fun we're having with it than, an hour on Instagram would ever give me. Constantly refreshing, just hoping that you may see one more like,
Yeah, man, it's I think it's something that we all struggle with a lot, especially with fitness and bodybuilding, because our community is so heavily on Instagram specifically. And Instagram can be so highly addictive because of that dopamine and those reward chemicals that you're getting from the likes, from the scrolling, from the reels, all these different things. So it can be very difficult. It's kind of like, and because a lot of us, like, you work with different companies, and it's kind of, we have obligations to be on social media to some extent. It's kind of like, here, try smoking this cigarette in the morning to start your day, and you're only allowed one cigarette in the morning. It's like, it's kind of difficult, you know what I mean? So, and cigarettes may not be the best analogy, but it's like trying to just have it like one time is pretty much impossible. Like, you're going to end up scoring to some extent. So, and spending a lot of time wasted throughout the day. So, setting those boundaries with yourself is very crucial. I like that you said set your phone out of reach. I do that a lot too. I usually end my workday around 7 p.m. and I'm on WhatsApp messaging my athletes all day long. I'm on Instagram scrolling, reposting people, whatever it may be. And so sometimes at 7 p.m., I'll just literally turn my phone off and set it completely out of reach and stay completely disconnected from my phone for the rest of the evening. So setting those boundaries with yourself is very crucial, especially if you're in the fitness and bodybuilding space where so much of our community is prevalent on social media. A lot of that's because as bodybuilders, we've talked about kind of how we're a little bit reclusive and kind of like homebodies to some extent too. So like when we want that connection, we're using the social media platforms to get that too. So it's being conscious of that and being aware of that so that you can maintain a healthier relationship. That's going to help your preps too. So you're not like
100%.
Like scrolling through food accounts and comparing yourself to other athletes and doing all those things and striving for external validation for your progress pictures. Like, do I look good, guys? Do I look good? Am I ready? Am I going to be ready?
Exactly.
When you should really just be listening to your coach in those scenarios. So
for sure. And one last thing that I'll put on there too that I like to do when it comes to my phone and stuff and social media is I refuse or really try not to even open it until I'm at cardio. Do not let it be the first thing your brain receives when you start your day. Don't go take your morning crap and sit on the phone. Just don't. As simple and dumb as this may sound, it's like you said, it's like waking and smoking a cigarette and thinking you're not going to smoke a cigarette all day or have more craving than you would if you would have just waited a few hours to smoke, kind of thing. If you put that off and walk outside and like realize, dang, it's a freaking gorgeous ass day to go do cardio. Like I get to go freaking do this, not walking out to my truck like, I'm gonna do my cardio now. Gotta do cardio. Got 30 minutes. And then, get to the gym. Sit here for 20 minutes till I can convince myself to get out of the truck and get this started. And, the whole time you're just sitting on Instagram and doing what exactly? You know what I mean? Just trying to fill yourself with that when, 30 minutes, you could have been home by now. And if you just got up and, had that discipline and walked in the gym and started pedaling. And I mean, we were just talking about runner's high the other day and, different things and, go get your dopamine fix there. And then if you want to check your phone, go ahead. Like it's funny, like even on days when I check in with Ben, like I especially if it's checking down, like I will not check my social. I will not look at a store. I will not even be on Instagram until I've sent my check. It's kind of thing. Like no, this is what takes priority. And then I'll, instead of being on Instagram, I'll watch the video of my check-in. I'm like, okay, what can I improve? Was this better than last week? Fills those areas with something that builds you up, not feeds you. It's like a person sitting on a couch eating potato chips. You can just sit there and just go like this all day long, but it's not feeding you anything good. You're getting that momentary satisfaction with every crunch of a chip, but at the end of the day, you feel like crap. You're actually happy. You know what I mean? So if you start filling those areas with something else, the whole person, I think, is going to feel better mentally, physically. And they always say the body goes where follows the mind. And if you can have a healthy brain and mind and thought process and actions, the physique's going to follow.
Yeah, I've always used this analogy that I kind of came up with a while ago called habit allowance. So imagine you wake up with $5 every day and you have to spend it on habits. You're literally forced to spend every dollar on a habit. And so if you wake up and you make your bed, that's like $1 spent. If you go outside and you see the sun, that's another $1 spent. Now, if you wake up and you immediately start scrolling on social media, you've already spent $1. If you go get in your car and you look at social media again, that's another $1 spent. You pull up to the gym, you look at social media again, that's another $3 spent. So it's like, that starts to add up when you could have been spending that on more valuable things that are going to, give you more fulfillment and progress you, like you mentioned as well. So yeah, those are like things that I do as well, where I focus on not looking at my phone when I wake up. I am very intentional about making my bed. I do like my morning hydration, so making sure I'm getting my water in. I do that. I make my espresso drinking coffee isn't necessarily the best thing to do right when you wake up, but it's a part of my routine and something I am kind of non-negotiable about. I'm like, I don't care
Right.
how bad getting coffee right in the morning is for me, but I do it anyway. And then I go outside and sit on my balcony back there and look at the sun. And I make sure I wake up early enough to be able to do all that before. But I am guilty at times where I go and sit on the toilet and like, because I have a sense of urgency when it comes to my work too. So immediately when I'm checking my WhatsApp messages, checking emails, checking all these things. Then before you know it, I'm drawn into Instagram and then I'm scrolling and it's a slippery slope. So you got to be very intentional about it and set a lot of boundaries with yourself.
And that's part of the reason you said it there, sense of urgency too. And that's part of the reason why I've turned off as many notifications as I can, because I feel like the notifications have helped increase that sense of urgency in us. As we see that notification, we're like, we have to respond to it. Like, if we don't, like, something's going to happen. And it's like a trigger. But if those notifications aren't there, you know, you can kind of hone that sense of urgency more into where it needs. You may, like you said, you may have an issue where you get sidetracked once in a while, but you know, I really feel like having those right in your face has, you know, created that in a lot of people. It's like there's a notification. Oh my gosh, I gotta see what it is.
Yeah, especially us coaches, because we really try to stay on top of things. And response times are always like one of the biggest negative critiques that people have about coaches. So it's like almost a fear of that sometimes that will drive us towards like a lack of setting boundaries and stuff. Like I said, I usually shut my workday off at 7 p.m. So I have my notifications turned off on WhatsApp too. So if athletes try to reach me out of that time, they get like an automated message like, hey, please reach me within business hours. And if it's if it's usually with an athlete, if it's really an emergency, like really like, I don't know, it's got to be something pretty severe that it needs to be attended to like right there in that moment.
Right.
I mean, unless somebody's peaking for a show or something, obviously I'll be working with an athlete through a peak, but anything outside of that, if it's that urgent, like 911 is probably the route you need to take, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly.
Man, you mentioned free meals too, and we've been out. I want to go into like some lighthearted stuff too. You talked about cheat meals. We've had burger and fries before, and I know that you get burger and fries a lot, but what are some other of your favorite cheat meals?
So burger and fries. Funny that that's what we got. So we'll go back to how neurotic I am. If it's not on my plan, I don't eat it. Very much mentality. And you know, burgers were written on the plan, so my brain was like, you can only have burgers. But you know, with off season, a little bit more so, you know, just from a healthy perspective and socialization, you know, I've kind of changed how I do that. So, you know, definitely, you can never go wrong with Cheesecake Factory. I mean, I'll just say I'm a brown bread whore. like, just give me that and I'll be content. And then, you know, I'm when it comes to going out to eat, it's as funny as it sounds. And, you know, I get to go out to eat twice a week. And with as much food as I'm eating, you'd think I really wouldn't want to. But every rest day, I probably spend at least an hour on Yelp for what I'm going to eat that day, just because I get so excited about it now. So, you know, my biggest thing is I refuse, unless it's like a good franchise where they're minimal, is I won't do a franchise restaurant. I just refuse. I'm like, if I'm going to eat out, I'm going to eat good food. So, you know, this past week went to phenomenal Mexican place. I absolutely love empanadas, and I've been on a quest to find good empanadas, and I have finally found some. And they're like truly authentic, like Mexican, like they weren't greasy, they weren't over salty. It was just good quality Mexican food. So that's Mexican's probably a solid go-to. As funny as it sounds, I do enjoy sushi, but part of my weird neurotic side is that's a lot of sodium. So for me to eat sushi, it's like, how do I gauge that without going freaking Oompa Loompa sodium bound and just being miserable for the rest of the evening? So, you know, I love my burgers and fries. I love Mexican, you know, either that or, you know, if I'm more on like a fresh note, I'll probably go like Mediterranean, you know, like a Greek, you know, something along those kind of lines. And then if I'm cheap, dude, Chick-fil-A chicken tenders are so good. Shout out to Nick Walker on this one. He got me hooked on those recently. I'm like, bro, I haven't had Chick-fil-A in years. The next thing I know, it's like every cheat meal on chicken tenders until it's my cheat meals ended up on a Sunday, and that didn't work out anymore.
Yeah,
no,
we're lucky to be in Houston. We have so many options for.
I love it. Like it's really so funny. I was in Georgetown recently and went to this restaurant, and it was just like your average oyster bar kind of place. Like it was quality food, like it was good food. But they had an in-house pastry chef. So their desserts were they didn't have their desserts listed on the menu because they rotated and like I got like a fish sandwich, and it was like a homemade, like in-house made roll that was super light and fluffy. And then like the desserts they brought out, you would have thought you were at like a 5-star, like Michelin star restaurant, like the desserts that came out of this place. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. So, that's one of my releases too. And, Ben and I have talked about this in the past. And, part of the reason we have the refeeds on there isn't necessarily to go slam a bunch of food. Cause like, I'm not the kind of person who's like, I'll go out to eat and may not actually finish my whole meal. I'll just eat till I'm comfortable. But it's, obviously still getting in, dense calories because that's, what we're after. But it's, it's a mental release. So, because I am a foodie at heart, to me, it's fun going on Yelp for 30 minutes and going through all the restaurants. And then, I'm like, oh, we're going to try this place. And, start creating these arsenal of places I like and, different things, or exploring hole in the walls, or, my favorites is I'll go on to Diner, Dive, and Drive-In's website. I'm like, all right, has he been anywhere in Houston? Has he been anywhere in Dallas? Has he been anywhere in Austin? Where has he been? That's like, I'll start there and then I'll go to Yelp.
I love it. That's how I coach my athletes too. I think it's really important. Free meals, because I'll put a free meal on a plan. I'm like, it'll be like, say, a training day or like a high day, right? Where like the last meal, I'll be like, or one free meal per week. And they're always like, is there any restrictions? Like, what should I eat for that free meal? I'm like, it's a free meal. Eat whatever the hell you want. And I always tell them, I'm like, take advantage of that. Use it for family gatherings. Use it for date nights. Use it for these things where you can connect with people. That way, it's like 2 birds, 1 stone. You're not just getting that mental release of being able to eat whatever the hell you want, but it's like also you're getting to connect with people and to spend time with family. And if you have an event coming up, you can use it for that, and you can plan ahead, and that way you don't feel restricted and like anxiety, and it can help a lot with that healthy relationship with food as well, right?
Exactly. And it's so true. It's funny because like, I was fortunate that Super Bowl Sunday happened to be on an off day for me, and my off days are when I do my refeed. So, ended up being able to do like my girlfriend and I had done it one night, so we decided to do it again. We went marinated and grilled our own chicken wings. Did it with like tater tots or something. I'm like, but we didn't go out to eat. Like, it didn't have to be at a fancy restaurant. Like, we went to a friend's house, and we were all able to socialize around it. And it fit what I needed, but I'll still be able to enjoy it and be around those I care about. Create those connections and all the important stuff that we're limited to for 16 weeks out of the year, so to say.
Yeah, there's something to be said about like cooking with people too, and like going and getting the food, bringing it home and cooking with people, and just like making whatever the hell you want and making it really delicious, and then enjoying like the fruits of your labor, right? So
it's funny you say that, because the first night we had made chicken wings, they're sitting there, I'm like waiting for them to be done. Like, is this what like normal people do on a normal basis for dinner every night? They gotta wait like 40 minutes for their food to cook, and it lasts about 5, and then they gotta clean up. Like, I'm so used to just my structured meals, and I'm like sitting there, I'm like, dang, they still got like 20 minutes left in the oven.
Yeah, man. I mean, when it comes out good though, it's like there's nothing more.
It was every bit worth it. But at the time, I'm like, man, is this what like the average person goes through when they're wanting to make dinner and have to wait for dinner to be
Yeah, I've told you some of the things that I cook up sometimes, and like it takes a lot of effort, but like at the end of it, when it's like really just nailed it. I made these like rosemary golden potatoes the other night with like fresh rosemary, and I just drenched them in olive oil, And I like pre-boil the potatoes. So you like pre-boil, like half boil them, and then you roast them so that they're really soft on the inside and then crispy on the outside. And it takes a long time because you're boiling them, which is like you're already cooked. You cook the potatoes once and then you cook them again in the oven, and it takes forever. But at the end of it, like they're so fucking good. Like yeah, it's like it's worth all the effort in the end, right?
It's funny because even on prep, just because I'm OCD about everything being the same, it's funny. That's how I cook my potatoes for prep. Is I get like white potatoes, I boil them all and just keep them in the fridge, and then I like crispy fry them in the pan or like chop them up in the air fryer afterwards, or like cook them a second way of some sort. But I was like, but it was so good every time. I was like, it was so worth boiling it for an hour just to freaking cook it for 15 minutes in the air fryer afterwards.
I'll probably do that too. If anybody's listening and they want to learn how to like enjoy their potatoes better, that's how you do it. You boil them first and then you fry them.
100%. I mean, and even if it's your regular meals, I mean, you probably saw my meal on my story last night. Like, I'll even make my plates look pretty. Like, I had my chicken, I had my green beans, I had like, if your food looks fun, odds are you're gonna enjoy it a lot more too. Like that's the thing, is have fun with this stuff. Like it doesn't have to be this monotonous, yes sir, like full on robot. We're robots, but have fun being a robot.
Absolutely. I've always tried to like really make my prep food very enjoyable. And I've gotten shit for that in the past. They're like, why are you being so fancy, bro? I'm like, because I'm trying to enjoy it. Because I'm trying to enjoy the process a little bit more. I don't know. Yeah. But it just makes it fun.
It's funny that you mentioned cooking too and doing that. Like, it really is such a therapeutic release. And I even talked to Ben about this during prep. Is even in prep, even more so, I love to cook. Like, I'll start baking desserts for people. Like, I've made brownies on prep before. Thanksgiving rolled by. I made like a strawberry rhubarb crisp for the Thanksgiving dinner with everyone. Like, I don't eat any of it, but I'm like, there's just something about cooking that's like therapeutic too, I think.
Hell yeah. I almost went to culinary school a long time ago, so I was very close to going to culinary school. And I think if you enjoy cooking and you gravitate towards culinary arts in any way, like, it's very helpful when you're a bodybuilder as well.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the amount, as funny as it sounds, because I watch like Chopped, Diners, Dives, and Dives, guys, like all those stupid food channel network things. But the amount of creativity that's actually put into my prep food, because now I have even a better understanding how flavors work together, just from watching stupid shows like that, has been like awesome. Like, there's times I'll sit on Google, I'm like, all right, I got fish in prep. What's the best way to cook this without any oil? Because I can't have oil. Like, and I'll research and I'll learn and I'll find what seasonings work for it and things that work. And honestly, it's another outlets that you can use instead of your food being this thing that you have to do. Make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this stuff gets expensive, so I don't necessarily recommend this for bodybuilders. But I've done things like I've done lobster in preps. I've like cooked up scallops during preps. I've cooked up. I'm like, dude, enjoy your food. It's like it doesn't have to be so boring all the time.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't mean that you need to try to incorporate Reese's cups into your diet either. Like, you can.
We're not going if it fits your macros. We're just making our food taste good.
Exactly. There's ways to like enjoy your food more without like eating highly processed, highly palatable food.
Exactly.
We'll keep it kind of lighthearted. Do you have an embarrassing gym story?
There's probably more of these than I could even start with. I got to actually think of one. I mean, I'm a goof, so I'm trying to think of a good one, because there's plenty of them.
When's the last time you felt like embarrassed or made an ass out of yourself on accident?
I mean, if you ask my girlfriend, that's like a normal day basis. So. Like, it's okay. So here's something funny, because like, if she's out of town, like, I'll just send her videos of me doing stupid stuff, and Evogen, they're my sponsor. They came out with a new product, and one of the things in the box was a headband, like full on karate style, like tie behind your head kind of headband. Man, And I'm home alone. It's just me and the dog here, dude. I put that thing on, and I'm like, oh yeah, woo! We're going to the gym. Like we're going to the gym now. And you know, like I don't. I probably have a lot of moments just because I enjoy having fun, like making things fun. Like you know, odds are you probably heard my laugh in the gym if you know me. Odds are you probably see me dancing or doing something goofy in the gym. Like so there's probably a weird sound coming from me of some sort at some point. So the embarrassing moments are definitely ranked up there. I probably will say one of the funniest incidents. This is a good story. It wasn't in the gym, but it was after training. It was the when I lived down in Florida, I trained with Nick Walker for a bit, and it was the first time I'd ever done legs with him, and we were doing the Rogers hip press, and I had like 8 plates on there, something stupid, and I'm in there, I'm on my set, and he's like, you're gonna get 30. I'm like, and I failed at like 18. I'm like, oh. So I'm like straight up failed. So he's just plates 2. He looks at me, he's like, all right, now you have to do 26. I'm like, oh gosh, should I do it? And my legs are fried. I mean, fried. So I'm at Texas, and they're cramping and locking up, and just the definition of giraffe legs. And I'm in Texas, went to Texas Roadhouse that night to eat, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, my legs do not feel good at all. And I got done eating, and so you know how most Texas Roadhouse, they have like the bar and then the seating area around it. So I'm like right here in the bar area, and it's packed. I go to stand up, and I just collapse in the restaurant. Laying flat out on the floor in the middle of Texas Roadhouse. And my legs are still bad. I like army crawl over the edge, and I grab the edge, and I'm doing a pull-up over the counter to try and stand back up because the legs are so red. And I'm like, and then I'm like 200 some pounds, and everyone in the restaurant's looking at me like, you okay? And I finally stand up and goes, it was leg day, and just walk. Just that's all I said. I'm like, it was leg day. Just walked straight out of the restaurant.
Oh my god! Somebody get this guy some rolls, right?
Literally. So that was definitely one of the good memories.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Have you ever like eaten shit off of a Stairmaster before?
Oh, 100%. It was funny. I mean, I didn't eat shit this year, but I was doing cardio, and one of the things I like to do with cardio is I'll break it up on different machines. And part of the reason I do that is just it makes it easier, but also, you know, gets your legs and hips moving through different planes of motion. And it was one of those mornings where I was just out of it. And I took my phone and I set it right smack dab on the step of the Stairmaster. And I guess where I put it is went right inside the whole machine.
Oh no.
So I'm trying to do my cardio, and I'm like over here trying to rip the whole side of the machine off, trying to get my phone out from inside the Stairmaster so I can finish my cardio.
Oh, no. That's one way to stay off of social media.
It worked, but yeah, there it was, just sitting in the machine on the floor. But yeah, definitely had some interest. Definitely missed a few steps on the Stairmaster a few times.
Yeah, I've during one prep I was just so depleted, and I like missed a step, and I was like stumbling, and then I just like completely just ate shit and fell backwards and landed on the ground. I was like, oh my god. But
yeah, I definitely had one cardio session that I was really questioning if I should still be doing cardio or if I should let my body calm down. I was in prep. I was a couple of weeks out, so we're hammered at this point. And I would do my posing check-ins, posing practice, and then go do cardio. That was only 10 minutes. And I had gotten done with my check-ins and felt my blood sugar tanking. And I'm starting to pour sweat, right? I'm pouring. I'm like, we can't eat yet. We got to do cardio before we do it. I got on that stairs and white knuckled that thing for 10 minutes, pouring sweat. I'm like, just one step at a time. You can pick your feet up. Just white knuckled. Like my hands were sore when I got off because I had been holding onto those handles so tight. Like, just don't fall off. You can do it. Just make it through.
Man, moments like that in prep, you're like questioning everything at that point, right?
Oh, I've had some delusional cardio moments. It's surprising what fasting cardio and low blood sugar can do to your brain.
Mm.
This was years and years ago. I was super depleted, and I got done with cardio, and all I remember was I needed to buy chicken breast. And the only thing I remember was I drove. It was like a 20-minute drive. Was driving home, went to 7-Eleven, out of all places, and was like fumbling around 7-Eleven trying to find chicken breast in the fridge until I realized I'm at 7-Eleven. So I'm like, oh crap. So I leave. And then all I do is I go down to the street and pull into the gas station because I'm like, oh crap, I need gas. And I went and checked my bank account the next day because I didn't believe I did this. I put $5 exactly of gas in and then spent the whole week driving around with my gas cap open. Because I was on the passenger side of the car too, so I never saw that I hadn't closed it after that morning. So I was in 7-Eleven looking for chicken breast, put $5 of gas in, and then left my gas cap open and just call it good.
Yeah, it's it'll have you doing some crazy things. If you weren't a bodybuilder, what would you be doing?
I enjoy my career field as it is, doing computer stuff. When I was in the military, I was big on special forces. So part of me thinks I have been active doing something. But it's funny that you bring up the culinary stuff because cooking was another avenue I had thought about and getting into culinary stuff. So there could be a strong possibility that, may have been chefing it up somewhere if I wasn't bodybuilding.
Maybe you and I can start a restaurant at some point. How does that sound?
It's honestly as funny as you say that. It's always been a joke of mine. Probably more so in the most recent years. Actually, just recently, I thought about the restaurant thing. Was I wanted to open a place that served breakfast food at night.
Ah.
I'm not talking about like IHOP status. I'm like talking like food. Yeah, like you could it's 5 o'clock. You got off work and you just want to go have some freaking breakfast food for dinner. And just like a farm to table breakfast food, that's open like 3 p.m. to 11 p.m.
We can be known for our perfect hash browns and house fries and potatoes.
100%. Ain't nobody gonna cook them like that. But yeah, no, it's funny you say that because there's been multiple times I've thought meal prep, I'm a restaurant. I'm like, there's been times I've tried to, wanted to reach out. I'm like, man, I wonder what a franchise for this place would be like, or how much it would cost. So I definitely think there would be a food avenue for me somewhere if I wasn't doing all this. So, and who knows, when I'm done competing, it's not completely not an option. I mean, there's some good residual income in that if you do it right. It's funny as you say and bring up residual income is I almost bought a car wash one time. I'd really researched into owning a car wash. I'm like, this is the best income ever. You don't got to do nothing. You just collect the quarters once a week, make sure the soup's full, and call it good.
I've looked into car washes as well.
That's funny. So
we'll open our breakfast for dinner restaurant at some point, and attract all the bodybuilders, macro friendly items, and the best potatoes we'll ever find.
Exactly. Dude, honestly, it'd be one of those weird places that could have some random stuff. There'd be a smoothie bar in there too. You want to pass through post work? What you want? I got you covered.
Protein pancakes and protein shakes.
Not a big menu. The menu's small, but it has breakfast. It has some shakes, and then it has some normal dinner food like burgers and stuff if you want. The ultimate bodybuilder go-to kind of place. All the foods we love that you could get in the evening too.
I love it. So I have one final question, and then we'll wrap things up. I ask everybody that comes onto the podcast this question, but what is your number one tip for best handling a setback?
Best handling a setback. Honestly, it's keep going forward. I saw this phenomenal podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm kind of a Jocko fan.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this thing that I've heard. It's called the power of one more. And it's regardless of what it is, if you have a setback, the power of waking up one more day, the power of eating one more meal, the power of taking one more bite, power of showing up to the gym one more time. And if you keep doing that every day, suddenly you look back and that power of one more has become you're executing every day. You had that setback, but you got up the next day and you still performed regardless, and I think the biggest thing is, in those setbacks and that is realizing you have a setback because you were doing something great, and you can't have even greater you won't appreciate what's to come. Didn't necessarily if you didn't have that setback. And it could be that you needed that setback because your vision wasn't right. So if you can realize the beauty of a setback and the power of that, and be able to turn that into something good, I think is key. And realizing it sucks in the moment, but there's beauty in it. I look at, some of the setbacks I've had with lifting. If I hadn't had that issue with my knee, or, the issue with my arm, not being able to contract it fully and different things, if I hadn't had those issues and setbacks, or people leaving or walking on my life, it probably wouldn't have made me the bodybuilder I am today. And realizing, those setbacks aren't given to us in life to break us, they're to mold us. And when we can change our perception on things, especially a setback, I believe that's a very powerful tool to propel us forward. Because, I think it goes in line with everything we said, because now we look at how do we get out of this setback? We start having to pour into ourselves a little bit more. We may have to start getting a little disciplined in our actions. We got to start executing a little more daily. I think a setback is truly an opportunity for self-growth. Because now all of a sudden, all those people that you were pouring into that were sucking energy, all those things that were sucking energy out of your life, or, that may have caused that setback, or maybe everything was perfect and you had that setback. It's a time to reflect and realize and, gravitate towards the person you want to be. So I believe if we change our perception on a setback, that truly, fosters, how we move forward from that. Because if we look at that setback, like the woe is me victim, why this happened to me, life sucks, blah, blah, blah. We put ourselves in a train of thought, and that's the only way we're going to think. It's very hard to break out of a cycle of once you get into a thought pattern. But if you realize, okay, this sucks, but I can't have this without a little bit of crap here, it's going to make this feel so much better. When I collapsed on stage at Battle of Texas, it was because of the overwhelming relief of all the setbacks and everything that had happened. And, just realizing if I just wake up one more day, if I show up at the gym one more time, if I do one more rep, if I eat one more spoonful of food, all those are going to just carry me forward and help develop me into the person I'm honestly meant to be. So I think the biggest thing with setbacks is perception.
Very, very, very powerful stuff, my friend. I love all of that. Yeah, just
this is why we're friends.
Tell us what your future goals are and what's up next for Jordan.
Myself, what I'm capable of. 2024, I show the world. 2023, I wasn't supposed to compete, none of that. But I knew if I just kept working that, things would play out. And, we walked in the Battle of Texas with an overall win. And, I was like, we knew we weren't ready for nationals 100% yet, but we were there. But even knowing that, I was able to walk into it with a lot of confidence because I knew I had put the work in. And we walked away with a 4th place in the debut of nationals, against guys that were 30 pounds heavier than me. But I'm proud to say, just say that you're probably one of the most conditioned guys in that show. And it was really exciting and eye-opening because it showed me and that I was capable of this, what I was capable of. And it put an end, it closed the chapter, that first vision that I had of, let me prove to myself and those close to me what I'm capable of. And now 2024 was about showing that to the world, and utilizing this platform that I've been given, because everything we talked about with the hardships coming over from adversity and growing as a person, I think has led me to this year now. So we literally, I woke up Sunday morning after nationals. Before I went and did my 20 minutes of cardio like I would do every day. Came back, and honestly, my breakfast was, I think it was like 2 English muffins, 2 whole eggs, and 100 grams of beef. And while I was doing that, Ben was right there and wrote my plan. And by 11 o'clock, I was eating my pre-meal that he had written out, was in the gym. And honestly, that Saturday night and that Sunday morning are the only 2 meals I've had off plan. And we've just executed since. We set the vision in place that we're going to come back for nationals in a fashion that we want to come back in. The goal is to come back undeniable, and that's what we're working towards. I've had some incredible opportunities open up and doors. I was able to sign with Evogen Nutrition as an athlete. Got a phenomenal team of people around me. Hunter, my coach Ben. It's helping shape this vision. And now I'm excited to continue to work and showcase to people all the hard work, show people, in it. I want to show people my story, that a lot of people have stories, a lot of people have faced things, a lot of people have adversity, a lot of people have struggles. Showing that a lot of self-belief will carry you further than you could ever imagine. And if you can start instilling that self-belief in yourself before anyone else believes in you, you're capable of a lot of great things. So going into this year, it's just continuing to develop mentally, physically, spiritually, into the person, it's created to be, and just continue to utilize the platform to ultimately give back. I love seeing other people win as much as I love winning myself. And they say, you attract the people that the way you operate, you're going to attract similar people. So I tell this band, I was like, we've set the standard that I operate at, and the key is you don't waver from that. You only go up from there. You set your minimum standard. If people are with you, they're with you. If not, that's okay. And accepting and realizing that and knowing that it's okay. It's okay if someone doesn't like you. And it's okay if people like you, but make sure they're liking you and not liking you for the right reasons at the end of the day. So yeah, like I said, this year is, people have been like, you're gonna do USAs, you put on so much size already, you're gonna do North Americans. I'm like, nationals, yeah. There's a vision for it, heart for it. It's here in Texas, with all my people, and there's just it carries a lot of meaning to me now. So even if I was ready for USAs, for me, I'm not chasing a show. I'm chasing physique. I'm chasing where I want to be, because I could do a USAs, but then what, to take some time off to still grow, or I could build the physique that I want for nationals, showcase the changes, showcase the effort, the work that went into it, and be a force after that. Not just disappear for 2 years because all right, we made it, but we way at the bottom of the totem pole on the weight class. So, just it lines me up for, to be in a better position. Luckily, I've had good feedback from judges and, coaches and people like you that, it's all aligned with that. Not too many people know this, but, I had one of the judges I know and good friend, he was like, you should do nationals. Like, he's like, go win battle, do nationals, like showcase what you have. He's like, put your name on the radar. I was like, and I used to tell people, I'm like, this is my breakout year. After 2023, people will know who I am. Now it's about solidifying myself as that. And he was like, I've had really fortunate guidance. He was like, if you don't win, that's okay, but people know who you are. So you go win, you come back undeniable, and you win it. Which is, it's funny that I'm always a believer, if you hear the same thing with some of the same words and verbiage from more than one person, also there's probably a reason. Mm-hmm. So, I've had multiple people, even Ben himself, were like, no, we come back next year in 2024 undeniable. That's why I had a judge tell me, he's like, don't go do New York Pro. He's like, do Legions. There's tiers of pro shows for a reason. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to do a lower tier show first and assess yourself and then, get some nerves out or whatever. And if you blow that show out of the water, fantastic. Go do a higher level show then at that point. But yeah, at this point, it's, continuing to develop and grow on that foundation that we built last year. I think is the ultimate thing, like I said, and that's in a physical, mental, spiritual sense, the whole person concept at this point.
Absolutely, man. I see the vision and I believe in you 5,000%, and everything you're chasing is going to come to you in due time, my friend. So I'm very excited to see it all unfold. Tell everybody where they can follow you and reach you.
So pretty straightforward. If you can spell my last name, it is J Vanderflier. Just first initial and last name on Instagram. Like I said, I'm not much of a social media person, so that is the only platform that I have, and I'm proud to say that. Hopefully some YouTube stuff will come out for you guys this year possibly, but just follow me on Instagram at jvanderflier. Feel free to send me a DM. I do check my messenger because I understand things get filtered, and I don't know how it all works sometimes, but it does. But always here to answer questions, different things like that, give back in, any way I can. And if there's things you guys want to see from me, shoot me a message and, we'll make it happen. It's an awesome team of people around here. So, it's been, Sean, you've been just a phenomenal friend and a wealth of knowledge and guidance. And I know I've pinged you for multiple ideas and sent you multiple videos on my training. Like, what do you think of this? How's this look? So, it's awesome, man.
Man, I'm always happy to help you on your journey. I'm extremely proud of you, and I admire you a lot as an individual, mentally, physically, spiritually, as an athlete. I watch you put in the work relentlessly day in, day out. I get to see it in person, which is super cool to watch and watch everything unfold as you continue to progress. And your progression has been so dramatic over the years, and watching it happen real time is really, really cool for me to watch. From a coaching perspective, from a personal perspective, and from a friend perspective. So I'm super proud of you, man. I can't wait to see all the success that's coming your way. And I'm really glad that I was able to give you this platform to share your story a little bit more and share more positivity. So I think we got a lot of value put out into the world today.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to more of it with you, dude.
Thank you for joining us. Your journey towards excellence does not end here. We're here to help guide you every step of the way. For more insights and to become a part of our community, follow and subscribe. Your feedback illuminates our path. Be sure to share your thoughts and stay tuned for more episodes.